Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Layer by Layer, the show about 3D printing and our place inside the industry. Today, we're going to be talking about Audi using printing inside of their factories, metal printing in space, how we build products around MVPs, and then a little bit about Micronics. But before that, let's go ahead and pay the bills. Today's episode is sponsored by us at Tangled. Tangled filament is our attempt to reduce the cost of 3D printer filament down to $10 per spool. We're doing this by optimizing the processes and taking advantage of every angle that we can get a hold of in order to drive the cost of US made filament down to $10. So far we've gotten down to 15, down from 22 in just 6 months, and this week we have released our very first color, so you can now have any color you want, so as long as it is either black or orange. So go ahead and check it out at tangledfilament.com. Tangled just released our first color. We had just released an orange. It is a limited run, not for sneaky reasons, but literally that's just all we had available to get made with it all, because it was actually a color that we were making for another client. And we overproduced in order to give you guys a little bit of this too. So it's a nifty kind of fluorescent orange. It's borderline fluorescent sort of orange. But it's not a really deep saturated orange. It's kind of a light fluorescent. So go ahead and check that out if you're looking for another color. There's only a few of them. I think we only did about 100 kilograms or so. So there's not a ton. Okay, into the news. Audi cuts fixture costs with 3D printing and Trinkle's automation software. At Audi's Bollinger Hof factory in Heilbronn, the auto company uses both manual labor and a high degree of automation to make range-topping cars such as the R8 and e-tron. A part could be manually polished here while a 3D scanning robot performs QA. The e-tron and the R8 factory is basically a handmade kind of bespoke factory. So they use a ton of fixtures. They actually need, in order to build the e-tron GT, Audi needs around 200 fixtures. Model years are now frequently updated, and there are many more models and variants than before. Therefore, the need for fixtures is quickly expanding. Fixtures need to be cheaper and faster to make. Trinkle is a software company. They make an automation software called, FixtureMate. FixtureMate, where you can basically import a part, and then you can build a fixture around it that will seat that part so that while you're working on it, you can have a fixture that holds the part, an oddly shaped part, in a nice stable fashion while you weld on it or put a chip into it or screw it in or whatever it may be. So this is a great example that we always like to highlight because, number one, FixtureMate is a good piece of software for making fixtures. Audi has cut costs for their fixtures by 80% by doing it this way. And yes, as their models become higher mix and there's more of them around that they have to do maintenance on, being able to quickly create fixtures is a huge cost savings because you're talking about going from hundreds of dollars down to like dozens of dollars if they're printing in-house and not counting the human time of doing all this work, which most organizations don't. They just look at the per part cost, which is a bad analysis. But the cost savings are significant. And quite frankly, with tools like FixtureMate, we should reach out to Trinkle. We should do an API integration with Trinkle, so that when they have a fixture made, it can be printed and shipped right to your door through the Slant 3D API. It's a great example of all that stuff. Metal 3D printing accomplished in space station, marking new era in orbital manufacturing. Astronauts on the International Space Station can now 3D print metal parts. After the successful installation of the ESA's metal 3D printer last January, the first test part has been produced. Developed by Airbus under an ESA contract, the printer uses stainless steel wire and a high-powered laser to create parts. This allows astronauts to manufacture essential tools and parts directly in space, reducing the need for supply materials from Earth and boosting mission flexibility. I believe that was it the first printer in space put up there in, I think it was like 2012. I think 2012, maybe 2014, but that seems too new to me. The first printer went up a while ago. That was made by Made in Space. I wonder where they are. I don't know if they still exist. I think they got acquired a while ago. Anyway, they have a metal 3D printer. It is interesting that they're using a laser, effectively a laser EDM machine. I don't know why they're not using a pure EDM, which is just a welder moving around. That is a simpler machine, but I'm going to guess that it probably had outgassing of some type, and also splash, because a traditional EDM machine is probably a lot tougher to control than a laser, effectively EDM machine. But it's inside the Harmony module. The ISS, the historic successful the part itself was a small S curve in liquefied stainless steel. Serves as a test print to demonstrate the readiness and precision of the metal printer for more complex tests. With a successful test, ESA has shown that the printer can handle detailed and precise manufacturing processes in microgravity. Quite frankly, and I'm sorry, I love space stuff, but this whole "it works in microgravity, we didn't know" shtick. Yes, we did. The FDM machine was obviously going to work in microgravity. You just don't need support material anymore. And yes, the EDM machine was obviously going to work in microgravity. This whole thing of like, will it work in microgravity? Well, imagine if there's not a downward force on the thing, probably going to work. So, yeah, anyhow. Let's see here. The laser itself is 1,000,000 times more powerful than a standard laser pointer. Everybody knows this. But anyhow, that's it's a nifty demonstration moment in time. This is the first. Do they have a CNC machine on the ISS? I don't know if they do. I don't know if they're able to actually machine a part up there. I don't know if printers are like the only manufacturing tool. That doesn't make any sense. There's got to be. But a CNC machine creates chips, so maybe not. By the way, yeah, printing is an exceptional process. Additive is an exceptional process because it's very controlled and since it doesn't have a lot of excess material, since it has effectively no waste material when done correctly. It should be a very good process for space in general, long into the future. But we're gonna have to build a printer for the station one of these days, for one of these private space stations. We're gonna have to build a print farm up there, cause that'd just be cool. We're gonna have to get to that. But anyhow, Micron, a desktop SLS 3D printer made by Micronics. So this is a Kickstarter right now, but I wanted to highlight this project for personal reasons. I have not been able to look at the machine closely. I've seen the same reviews that everybody else has seen all over the place. So there's not any new information that I can provide. But I wanted to highlight this thing to give it a little bit more steam and a little bit more presentation, so for your guys' consideration. Again, it's a Kickstarter. Don't invest any money unless you're willing to lose it. That's the risk of a Kickstarter. They're a young company. They're a couple college kids and they're advisors and that kind of thing, so it's a thing. However, it looks like a cool machine. I really like the fact that this machine is coming out of a U.S. company, U.S. university, and U.S. entrepreneurs. So I wanted to give them air on the podcast for other people to look at. From a manufacturing standpoint, the machine looks good from a distance, and I appreciate what they've done from a design standpoint, and also the fact that they've actually built a full stack machine, which even the FDM companies early on never really did that. No one did full stack. I think maybe Lilsbot did like a fork of slicer at one point, but no one's really gone full scratch build for one of this stuff. And given the fact that there has not been a desktop SLS machine and that it's coming from a U.S. company, a U.S. startup, I think that's great. It is built in Madison, Wisconsin. Yes, every one of our printers is meticulously designed, built, and tested right here in Madison, Wisconsin. So, the overall, go check out the specs of the printer. It looks impressive from a distance. Haven't looked at it. By the way, if any of the guys who are part of there want to come on to the podcast here, I would love to talk to y'all. So do comment or reach out or something if you happen to be watching. I'd love to talk to either one of you and get kind of more detail about the journey of how you got here and how you built the machine over the last 2 or 3 years that you've been working on it. So it looks like a great story. It looks like a great machine. Looks like a good company. But it is a Kickstarter. They don't have a factory yet, all the things. Well, who knows what they all have, but high risk. But yes, I wanted to give Micronics a shout out here. And yeah, if you guys want to come on the podcast, do a deep dive, happy to have you. Okay. Alrighty, company updates here. Tangled. Color release. Yes, like I said at the beginning, we have released our first color. This is not necessarily going to be a habit. This is an experiment. This is an MVP product. We had a client that needed a custom Pantone of orange. So we had made the master batch for that orange, and then we had produced a bunch of filament for that project. And while we were at it, we thought, we're making orange. Let's make some extra orange and see what you guys all have. Because orange is not commonly used out there. So we whipped up some orange. And we're going to see how this goes. This is the first time that we've done a color made by us that is not... Well, we did clear at the very beginning, so there's technically that. We did clear, and then black. Since black, we have not introduced any new colors aside from glut materials and that kind of thing, which aren't our material. But we've released orange over there. Depending on how this goes, we will shift the model and start planning around having higher mix. We don't really anticipate pushing colors hard. That's not what Tangled is about. If we start going high mix with colors, then we turn into every other printer company, and it's not a way to drive down the cost of filament. It's a way to give more selection, but it's not a way to drive down cost. I would imagine that 10 years from now, we'll have 5 colors, like black, white, gray, red, blue, green, something like that. The primary colors, and that's it. There's no reason for us to ever do much more than that. But we're experimenting with it right now. And we're going to start with the orange, which is not one of the standard RGB color wheel colors, any of it. But it's a nifty looking orange. It's kind of like a candy orange. I don't know how to define it. Candy corn, something like that. Not like really saturated, sort of fluorescent. Oh, wait a second. Here is the orange. Now, from my viewfinder, it looks like it's getting fleshed out a bit, but that might be fairly accurate. It's coming on the standard plastic spools. It will not be on reused spools. For the record, reused spools are on the tail end. We're not going to utilize them much more because they're not able to scale with us much more. So we'll be going to spoolless and these plastic spools. The plastic spool rolls will start to become more expensive as we ramp up spoolless, but spoolless is still a couple months out. FYI on all that stuff. But yeah, here's the orange. It's a pretty nice orange. I like it quite a bit. It's nifty. But yes, there is the orange there. Can I park it someplace? I'd like to just sit right here for a minute. So I'm not gonna do the orange. But yeah, that's the orange that we just released, and it should be available right now while this podcast is live. Probably came out yesterday or so. Other Tangled updates. New materials. Not much on new materials. We're working on PETG because it's part of roadmap and master plan there. But the PETG, it's a lot of just machinery set up to get it in flow and get it stable and that kind of thing. Memberships. Okay, so memberships are starting to gel. They will be released here fairly soon, probably in the next couple of weeks or so. But what memberships are going to do is we're going to kind of restructure how it works. Membership is probably going to give you access to free shipping. It will give you exclusive colors, like whenever we do one of these excess batch and that kind of things, you will get first dibs on that kind of stuff because they're limited runs, so they won't be available for folks. So membership will give you access to that. We may put bulk purchases behind memberships. Like if you want to order a pallet or like print farm quantities and that kind of thing, we may do that. Of course, 3D model files, that kind of stuff, and then some testing data around different materials will probably be as part of a Tangled membership as well. So we want to make it as valuable to you as possible. Right now, the pricing for memberships is looking like $7 to $9 per month, which is a huge value, the fact that you get free shipping and the rest of it. You will also get more discounted filament because with memberships, we're able to kind of predict how much stuff to be made. So we're able to effectively push that savings onto you. Not only is there the membership revenue coming into us, but the predictability of demand from memberships is really useful to us because we know, oh, we can run more efficiently. We can run for a few days continuously, making all this black because we know next month our members are going to buy this amount of black. So we're able to run more efficiently and also pass those savings on to you. So memberships will have kind of leading edge on low cost filament, and that will probably activate another price drop for y'all. We'll see, because we're shifting around with stuff. By the way, this spool screwing up our life. These plastic spools screwing up our lives. They cannot be sourced affordably enough. We're very incentivized right now to fix spoolless and go with spoolless, because those spools have increased in cost and are more significant than they used to be, even when we started. So it's a thing we got to deal with. But yeah, memberships will be coming up, and yeah, memberships will have a ton of perks. Should be a great deal for y'all and should enable some additional steps. Anyone who's not a member, we are probably going to activate paid shipping. Pricing will either be the same and then you have to pay for shipping, or potentially more. We'll see. But it's all kind of in the air how it's going to dance to make sure that members are getting additional and good perks, but so that everybody else can also partake in it. So we're dancing with it all. Let's see here. Okay, API. Oh, API updates. Yeah, so the Slant 3D API has been running great. We're ramping it up because there's a number of large users coming on. So we're re-ramping server space for it all. But that being said, there are new features coming to the API, because as people have been running files through and doing test prints, we're getting more feedback on the edge cases. And guys, it's exceptionally difficult to make a machine that can make anything to a high level of quality all the time. It's really hard. It's actually almost exceptionally difficult. Almost impossible. Actually, not exceptionally difficult. Almost exceptionally difficult. It is exceptionally difficult. But to take any random object in and produce it as a customer intends and send it back is stupidly hard. But as we go through this and as more people use it and we get more feedback, we're refining things like slicer settings to make them increasingly universal. We've used all of our data from the past. We've made a lot of parts over the years, but even that doesn't do enough, because even though we've made hundreds of thousands, millions of parts, the mix of them is not necessarily as high as what this API is now enabling. Like, we've done hundreds, maybe thousands of different parts over the history of the company, because we focus on mass production. So it's big batches of the same part very often, or iterations thereof. But to do really high mix of any random whatever part is a completely different type of monster that we're prepped for. But again, you're chasing the long tail. You can get the bulk of parts right there with generic settings, but then everybody else tailing off here, the other 5% of everything, start to mess with it. So we're pushing an update for slicer settings here soon. We may make slicer settings somewhat accessible through the API, so like setting resolution and that kind of thing. But right now it's mainly just refining it to make it more robust. We may activate things like fuzzy skin and that kind of stuff will be things you'll be able to turn on, all that. We are also working to expand the API so that the API, right now, if you connect the API to your app, you have customers sign into your app and they pay you and then you pay us. And the reason for that structure is because the vast majority of the apps that this was designed for have to have that structure anyway. They have to be paid on a per transaction level because they're doing like integrations with like eBay or Amazon and that kind of thing, or Shopify, where that's necessary. There's not really any other way to do it, because for you to get your cut, you have to bill the customer and then pay us, and we get our cut. But we're updating. It's come to our attention from a number of the developers in the Discord and a number of partners that have reached out that we need to allow individual purchasing through the API itself natively, to where a customer could put in a credit card into the API and pay us directly, and the developer that is connecting to our API effectively is just pointing them towards us, which is great, but it's not a functionality that we built into it originally, because we thought it was an edge case, because that's generally a model that we would anticipate for a free application, which is not generally very sustainable. So we didn't consider it heavily at the beginning. We had it kind of on roadmap, but we didn't want it in baseline features. And it's so easy to let this type of software bloat to where we're very persnickety about what new features we add into it until it's all really, really stable. But we will also be adding new materials. New materials are very, very close on the API. We will have PETG and some very special new materials coming out quite soon that will be accessible through the API and therefore through the other applications like the Etsy plugin. Those will all be coming down. Etsy, as far as that goes, there's not any big updates on the application itself. We've hit some usage milestones in the last couple of weeks. A lot of folks are getting a hold of it. But a few of the projects that we've seen going by, people have been asking for like third-party parts. And very often third-party parts are not necessary if you know how to design the product appropriately. So it's informing some new video content coming down. We're going to try to do some more print-in-place mechanisms around like fidget toys and that kind of thing. Like how do you get a satisfying click out of a 3D printed part? That's a thing for us to look at. Okay. Discussion topic. How we build products. How we do an MVP part 1. Launch, then refine. Okay, so a little bit of context for everybody here. About once a week, I write an internal email memo to the company, which talks about some principle of how we kind of operate. Minimum viable product is something that Slant 3D really, really heavily utilizes. It's kind of something that breaks people very often when they come in, because we believe in launching very quickly, getting a baseline out, and then improving it from there. This is often misconstrued as throw out garbage and then fix it. That's not what it is. That's not what an MVP is. A minimum viable product is the minimum useful thing you can create that will generate money. And sorry to be crass, but that is the way of doing it, because generating money indicates the usefulness to a customer. If someone will pay you for the thing, you know it's useful and you know it's valuable to someone to some degree. By the way, it doesn't have to be a lot of money. You can build 99 cents or $100 or $10,000, whatever you want. But if somebody gives you money for it, there you go. It is an actual real product. People use free products all the time, but a free product is not necessarily getting over the milestone of useful. If somebody doesn't actually pay you for it, it's not a business. It's not an actual product. It's a application or a hobby or a display or a free video or something like that. Until you're paid for it, it's not a real thing. But for us, minimum viable product, actually, I have the whole essay in front of me. I want to kind of read from it. We do not add a feature until the function is complete. Launch fast, be embarrassed by it, then refine it. Do not add something else until that feature is done. This is what it is. Yes, the minimum, smallest, useful thing you can make. Once that thing is out, you polish it. You get that thing going really well. Then, once that thing is done, as in demonstrated done, that customers like it, it doesn't crash, it doesn't break. Once that thing is done, then you can add another feature. This is also another thing that like internally can be confusing in my management style. Because when somebody tells me that we're done, we got that built, Gabe, then it's like, cool, next thing. We're moving on to the next thing now. There is a roadmap, so we're going to move on to the next feature once that first feature is done. But when folks are first introduced to MVP, they say done, but it's not necessarily with the testing or the qualification to really prove that it's done. And this is the issue of like, yeah, we made a video yesterday. Done. Was it a good video? Did it achieve the minimum viable product for the video? Did it create a valuable piece of information for the client? If it did not do that, if it did not do what that video has to do, then it's not an MVP. That was just an attempt that we missed. A minimum viable product is a complete finished thing. but it'll be smaller than you want. It'll be less functional than you want. It will not have features that you may want. As designers, we want a lot of stuff, but most of it is not necessary for a customer to use it. And you also do not need everybody to want your product right off the bat. Perfect example of this. The most public MVP that I would talk about is Tangled Filament itself. So with Tangled Filament, it is the epitome of MVP. We released 1 to 3 videos about filament last year, and that created a bit of feedback with us that said, like, oh, there's a problem with filament right now. We could do something about this. We're producing filament. Let's go ahead and produce filament. But we didn't do anything with it for a while because we didn't want to take capacity away from our print farm. We were like, we're doing our own stuff. We can't now add another job on top of it unless we have another extruder that lets us run efficiently. Well, lo and behold, an extruder came up available in market. And by the way, it was stupid cheap. Like when we bought the first Tangled extruder, it was a fixer-upper. There we go, a fixer-upper. But we got a deal on it, which meant that we were able to start making filament for Tangled with a machine that could be committed to that project that wasn't high risk. So we could make some filament, throw it out the door, and we could see, will people buy this? Will somebody give us money for this? And y'all did. And you continue to do that. And with Tangled, we keep on adding on one more feature. Like, okay, here's a new spool format. Okay, here's a larger scale release. Like we did batches for a while, and now we just continually ship orders. And then, we're doing a color now just to see how the world reacts to it, to poke at this and slowly take bites out of this elephant. But the MVP for Tangled was a video whining about filament. And then the next step up MVP was a fixer-upper extruder that would allow us to make a little bit of filament in a dedicated fashion for Tangled. And then, okay, we're going to use our internal spools. Oh, now we're going to make a custom spool. Now we're going to bring out machinery to do spoolless. You add on the features very, very iteratively as fast as you can because the rate of improvement is how you survive. But you do not try to launch filament. Here are all the colors in spoolless in 12 different formats and everything else all at once because most of it is going to be wrong. Like very possibly, like we just released Orange. You guys might not be clicking on the link right now to buy Orange, which is why we did this as an extended run of existing material. If for some reason this doesn't sell, we can use it inside of our farm for this client that we made it for. So it's a very safe test of a product. This Orange right here is literally its own MVP within Tangled. But yes, when creating a minimum viable product, many people misconstrue it as slap something together that's garbage and throw it out there. And if it crashes, that's fine. It's okay to a limited degree, but a product to be useful has to be useful. It has to be active. It has to be loved. It has to be appreciated. Well, no, it has to be useful to the user, to where the user will tolerate its shortcomings for the feature that it provides. Once you know that people want that core feature, then you can start adding another feature and more capability. But Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, has a really good saying about this, that if you're not embarrassed by your MVP, you waited too long to launch. And this is very true. There is a clock on every company. You have to get something out the door. This doesn't mean that you ship an incomplete product. It means that you ship a minimized product. What is the core nugget that makes this useful to somebody? Build that and then give it more functionality. This applies to every one of our products, like Etsy in its current state right now. We launched it. We had a limited number of server space for it. And we're like, we can only support these size files. And then we expanded that out as people managed to crash it even with those size files. And then we expanded it out. And then we added in more. And then we have baseline colors right now, which are black, white, and gray. We're going to start expanding that now that's been stable. And the current users that we have are happy with it and getting what they need from it. We started out with only U.S. domestic shipping, and then we started going international. All these things where you get a base user group, a base group of people who see that it's useful with the functions that it has, and then you give them more and more. Which also, side note, when you launch a limited product that has a limited number of features, like, oh, we only sell black filament, when you release additional features, they're big delights for people. This is kind of a hack in product design that when your product can evolve, and if you ship improvements continuously, they become like little Easter eggs and little surprises each day. It's like, oh, they changed the button on there, so it's better. Oh, that button bounces now on the app. Oh, that's better. That's cool. As opposed to big releases where it's like, there's this one, and then pull off a sheet and here's a whole new one. That's great, but that's only one moment of surprise. Whereas if you do the little releases, the little small nuggets of improvement, and just ship them every single day, ship an update every single day, then people get those hits of excitement of new things more often. And it's not shady. It's just literally show your customers that you care on a daily basis. Ship updates often. It's functionally no different than one version, new version, but it's a better customer experience. People are happier with you and they notice that you care and they hear your feedback and that kind of stuff. And they say, this button lags. And then you say, we push the update and the button stops lagging. That delights people so incredibly. So if you're a developer, ship quickly. If you're a hardware developer, know exactly what the baseline thing is you can start with. Most people can live with having any color they want as long as it's black. That's okay. If you're doing content and that kind of thing, take a selfie video and share some information or tell a joke or whatever it happens to be and see if anybody watches it and then go from there. Because the additional layers of features very often don't really add much more utility. They add more comfort. They add a little bit more in utility, but they end up generally convoluting the product. Like even right now, one of the most famous and most useful products in the world is ChatGPT. You type or speak to it, and it speaks back. Done. It has a lot of multimodal features right now, but I'm going to bet that most people aren't really utilizing those very heavily. I don't take photos of things very often and put it in there and say, what is this? That isn't natural to me. I talk to it. And literally all they have is a chat box. They have this city worth of processors behind it, but it's a very simple baseline product, and they've been very careful about adding in new little features and doing it delicately. I do have a gripe with them. I think they've screwed up the iconography because I don't know what the difference between a microphone and headphones are. I know it's like have ChatGPT listen versus have it transcribe, voice mode versus transcription. Confusing. I don't know which one I'm clicking. I have no idea which one of those icons it is. And by the way, first world problem. Of the things, if I'm whining about the icons in an app, the app must be pretty good. Just side note on that whole stuff. But yes, an MVP. There's 6 rules that we have for an minimum viable product. It should be useful to the customer. That's rule number 1. It has no more features than what is needed to solve the simplest version of the customer problem. If people need filament, give them filament. It does not have to be 5 different colors. That's additional. If people need filament, they're trying to find some material to push through a machine. That is the simplest problem. Therefore, you do not necessarily need 20 colors right at the start. Minimum viable product, the other 2 rules. I want to make sure I tell this truthfully. It is cheap. This is a component. A minimum viable product is meant so that a company can get product out quickly. An MVP should be cheap and fast. Quick and dirty is okay so long as your customer doesn't really notice. But like your backend doesn't have to be perfect. Oh, here's the perfect example of a MVP from a few years ago. Right now we have a print-on-demand app. The way it works is it plugs into our API, which talks to a server, which has the Slant brain and all these other things that allow it to slice and move quickly and be efficient. The very first POD was created about 3 years ago by me. I made it in 2 hours. I did not write a line of code because I didn't want to have to deal with it. The way it worked is that it was a Google form that linked to another Google form that linked to a PayPal button that then linked to the confirmation page. And you would upload your you would put in your shipping information, and then you would upload the file that you wanted to be printing, and then you would complete payment. And we would not get a notification. And once payment was completed, we would get an email notification, and we would download the file, slice it manually, and print and ship it to you. And that shipping info auto imported in the spreadsheet, so it was easy to put in. But we squirrel caged it. That was an MVP. The customer had the full experience. It was fully useful to them. And we knew whether anybody would use it or not. And then from that, with 2 hours worth of layout, we had a full, complete MVP product. I didn't spend on a bunch of developers to build the new version of the app or anything like that. No, we just set up what is the functional experience for the customer to where the customer will get a 3D printed part. That's what they're after. They do not care about the back end, and the back end doesn't matter. And in fact, until we're doing 1,000 parts a day, the back end still doesn't matter. I can hire a bunch of people to just slice files all day. That's usable for a minute. So the MVP does not even have to functionally work the way you imagine it to work. It just has to be useful to the customer. How you achieve that result doesn't matter. So it should be cheap. It should be fast. An MVP is to get product out the door. Not your perfect product. Get it out the door. Start taking your lessons, getting the information from it. Do customers like it or do they not? Do they give you money? If they don't, you have a bad product, change it and move on. It is not final. The MVP is not your magnum opus. It's an attempt to find out what customers want. And if your assumptions about what they want are correct, do they give you money? It should be limited. If it's not limited, you waited too long to ship it. If it's your perfect ideal of a product, you're too late. Like you've spent too much time thinking about it, because there is a 99% chance that your product is going to be wrong in some major way that you did not realize until users got a hold of it. So do not try to finish it. Give it all the features that it should ever have. That's just the wrong way to go about it. Okay. Yeah. But I will probably publish this memo on like LinkedIn here at some point. I'm sorry it's LinkedIn. I know there's other blogging platforms out there. I used to use LinkedIn a lot. I don't use LinkedIn much anymore, but it's fine. What are the other ones? Medium. I used to publish on Medium, but I don't even have a profile anymore. And you got to find a password and everything else. But I'll try to get this published on LinkedIn in the next little while. So follow me on LinkedIn. And you can do that. Gabe Bentz, LinkedIn, hashtag, username, whatever it is. Okay, so that's it. Well, that's the show, guys. Let me know if let us know if there's any type of content that you want to see, as per usual. Do comment any new features that you want to see from any of the products or projects that we're working on. And do let us know what you think of the Orange, even if you're just looking from a distance. What does that look like in frame there? Give us some feedback. Do you like it? Are there other colors that you think we should have? All the things. Have a great day, everybody.